So I've got the Leinster gear on today because I'm going to talk about everybody's favourite international rugby coach, Michael Cheika. There's been a lot of talk about him perhaps getting the sack as the Wallabies coach. I don't know how serious a lot of it is, to be fair. The board have just come out and given him their full support line, which is often a kiss of death in a lot of organisations. I mean, rugby doesn't sack coaches the same way that soccer clubs do, but there's a lot of cases in soccer where football, where a coach gets the full support of the board, and then the next week he loses another game and then he's sacked. Not sure whether the same is true here, but that's kind of where we're at. They've just been beaten pretty handedly 2 times in a row by New Zealand, and they've given him their support that they're. He's still the man to lead them through to the World Cup. Obviously, still saying that the current situation is not good, but still has the backing of the board. So I have a quick look at his club record, where he's kind of been scouting, how he's done with the Wallabies, and who could possibly replace him if he were to go. So obviously, he coached in Europe, France, as well as Leinster, where he had pretty good success. He won a Pro 12. He won European Cup. I think 65% winning percentage with Leinster, which is nothing to sniff at. Moved on to the Wallabies, the Waratahs, jumping the gun. But yeah, he coached the Waratahs first season. They did pretty ordinary. They finished kind of mid-table, I think like 8th. And it was interesting because he was appointed the same year that John Kerwin was appointed coach of the Blues. And my mate at the time, I was a keen Waratahs fan, and we were both kind of see how our teams would go with their new coaches. And sure enough, second year, Cheika won the title with the Tars. And the Blues just kept on their kind of merry way at the bottom of the table. So the guy had pretty immediate success with the Waratahs after a pretty good record in Europe. So the guy knows something about coaching according to his coaching record. Waratahs had never won a title before. That was their one and only title under Cheika. I think the following season they finished 3rd, and then he ended up with the Wallabies. How did he go with his scouting while he was at the Waratahs? I mean, as Wallabies coach, I would expect him to have kind of less influence over the players that are coming through the ranks than perhaps as a Super Rugby coach. We will give him credit for some good signings. He's the guy who lured Israel Folau over to play rugby union. He was having a poor time of it in Australia on Aussie rules, and there was talk about him going back to league. Ended up playing rugby, and Cheika gets a lot of credit for that. Will Skelton came through the ranks while he was there. Michael Hooper signed for the Waratahs when he was in charge, but I think Hooper was kind of already on the scene by that point with the Brumbies. Latu came on, and he's now Wallaby. Beale joined back from the Rebels, so kind of credit for getting him back. Naira Ovoro came over from League, so he had a pretty good record with converting guys from League into Union. But there's also a few misses. He was criticised for not signing up Pete Samu, who went to the Crusaders. He played for Randwick Club, which is where kind of Cheika has his roots, so kind of a miss there. Michael Alatoa ended up going to the Crusaders. I think he only got 1 game for the Tars. I guess kind of a miss. Adam Coleman ended up going to the Force. Not sure how... he was probably pretty young at that point, so I mean, I guess you could call that a miss that he didn't stick around with the Tars. Lopeti Tamani went to the Rebels, so some good, some bad. I guess that's kind of, I mean, it's not down to one man when they're doing their scouting. It's a whole team of people. Probably room for improvement there, but I mean, anyone who gets Israel Folau is gonna be in the good books. And then, he took over the Wallabies when Ewan McKenzie had his kind of debacle and he got the sack. Or did he sack or get resigned? Either way, Ewan McKenzie left in a hurry, and Cheika had to take over the Wallabies in a hurry and take them on their Northern Tour. The Northern Tour didn't go that well. I was after a first up Bledisloe lost, 3rd game of the Bledisloe. They lost to the All Blacks 28-29 in Brisbane. So 1 point loss to start off his reign. Then they beat Wales, lost to France, lost to Ireland, lost to England. So their Northern Tour finished 1 out of 4. Obviously, that's not a great start to his Wallabies career, but he took over the team with virtually no notice, so kind of take those results with a bit of a grain of salt. 2015 was kind of his year. He won the abridged version of the Rugby Championship, 3 results out of 3. So they won that title. Rugby World Cup, they kind of had that pool of death, which had England and Fiji and Wales, and they managed to get all the way to the final, beat Scotland in that controversial quarterfinal, beat Argentina in the semi-final, and then they lost to the All Blacks in the final. So a pretty good run. I mean, 2015 for Cheika was a pretty good year. He was Coach of the Year. So he has a pretty good background with his coaching. The guy hasn't suddenly become a bad coach overnight. He's got a decent record. 2016, it kind of goes downhill. They finish with 6 wins out of 15 games, and they get swept by England at home. Not a great look. 2017, 14 games, they had 7 wins, 2 draws, and 5 losses, so a slight improvement. And now 2018 is off to a pretty poor start. The losses to Ireland and New Zealand of late. The series, they lost to Ireland 2-1, and they've lost the 2 Bledisloe Cup matches to the Kiwis, to the All Blacks. The Kiwis are the league team, even if New Zealanders are called Kiwis. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on him because of that recent record, I would imagine. Sports is the kind of thing where it doesn't really matter what you've done before. I mean, it'll buy you a bit of time, but it's more or less what have you done for me lately. And Cheika's record of late is not good. But, to be fair, he's played Australia and New Zealand, which are the top 2 teams in the world. Just to put that into a bit of context, New Zealand, since Cheika took over, the All Blacks, have only lost 4 games. And that whole time that Cheika's been in charge, that's to anybody. They lost to Australia twice, that's Cheika. Once to Ireland and Chicago, and once to the British and Irish Lions in that tour. There's also 1 draw with the British and Irish Lions there. But the All Blacks have had a phenomenal record at the time Cheika has been in charge of the Wallabies. So I feel like it's a bit of a false kind of judgment to give him too much grief for not beating the All Blacks recently. Very few teams have been beating the All Blacks. And the Aussies have to play the All Blacks more than anyone else. So that's always going to be tough. Admittedly, he also has a pretty poor record against England with just 1 from 7. His record against Ireland is 1 from 5. So against these 3 teams, they do struggle. His record over Wales, though, is impeccable. 4 from 4. Argentina, 6 from 6. South Africa, France, they're all kind of in the middle. Scotland in the middle. So his overall record with the Wallabies is at around 50%. Mackenzie before him was 50%, Deans was like 58%, and he was maligned as well. So Cheika's record is no better and not that much worse than the guys before him. Now, am I saying Cheika's the right man to take the Wallabies to the World Cup next year? He's the guy for the minute. Now, if you're thinking about World Cup next year, you got to think about who could possibly replace him. I mean, Larkham is kind of the obvious choice because he's already with the Wallabies. But I don't know about you, but how impressive was Larkham's coaching stint with the Brumbies? It was okay. Would I back the Wallabies to get a sudden improvement with Larkham in charge? I mean, great player, but as a coach, he didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't do what Cheika did with the Waratahs and take them to a Super Rugby title within the 2nd year. Obviously, resources are different teams, different players, but yeah, I don't know if Larkham is that guy. I've heard Dave Wessels, the Rebels coach, also kind of bandied about as a possible replacement for Cheika. He's done a decent job with the Force and a decent job with the Rebels in those years with them, but does that mean he's suddenly going to take the Wallabies to World Cup glory? I think that's a bit of a stretch. And then if you look kind of to the rest of the world, I mean, Dan McKellar, coach of the Brumbies, only been in the Brumbies for a year. Far too early for him. Brad Thorne, 1 year with the Reds. Far too early for him. Coaches abroad. I mean, most of the good coaches are under contract because they are coaching up until 2019. So that's the kind of major problem. Like, although Cheika is not having a great moment at the minute, having lost to Ireland and New Zealand, I think we probably need to judge him how he goes against Argentina and South Africa. Because if you're judging yourself against the All Blacks, nobody looks good, to be fair. Nobody looks good against the All Blacks. So, I mean, apart from maybe the British and Irish Lions. So, yeah, we judge him on those other results, see how he goes. And even if you were to sack him, I'm not sure who you replace him with. From his selections kind of late, you get the feeling he is building for the World Cup. He's trying a lot of new combinations. It's not kind of a set and established pack. You'd probably like to think that he would have had a better idea of where he was going to be at this moment, but still a bit of chopping and changing. So Cheika, I don't think is all that bad. He's got a coaching record which has some success. I don't think he's become a bad coach overnight. He does talk kind of a lot of crap in the media, so he's always more likely to get kind of stick from the media in return. He's kind of an emotional guy, so he is prone to all that stuff. He says some silly things, has some kind of funny quirks. He's got a bit of a John Mitchell kind of quirkiness with him. So again, attracts more flack, especially here in New Zealand. But yeah, I would say keep him if it was my choice. If I was Raylene Castle in charge of Aussie Rugby, the guy's got a record of success. Sure enough, it hasn't been that great of late. He's had some ups and his downs with the Wallabies. Overall record is not fantastic, but it is not the worst. See what he can do up until 2019, and then in 2019, a whole bunch of coaches are suddenly going to become available. Perhaps assess your options at that point. I mean, Cheika, he's not in it for the money. He's a millionaire. He doesn't need to be coaching the Wallabies. He does this for his passion. He's clearly a passionate guy. He still hasn't got it right. He still needs some work until 2019, but I always lean to keep the current guy instead of just getting someone new. A lot of teams, when you get someone new, they do have an initial bounce back period while they're trying to kind of settle in and improve for the new coach, and then a bit of a lull. So I would say keep him, but you guys let me know your thoughts. I know he's a pretty controversial figure. There's a lot of guys who have mentioned in the comments that the Wallabies just need to get rid of him, that he's not the man for the job. Keeps picking the wrong players, and he has his favourites, and there's probably a bit of little politics going on in Aussie Rugby, but that's my 2 cents. You guys let me know what you think about Cheika, whether he should stay and where he should go, and if you think he should go, who's his replacement? That is kind of the key question, because if you're changing him for someone who's not going to do any better, kind of what's the point? But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.